Hello class, this is Mrs. Stoltenberg again. In this video, I wanted to offer you a quick review of our real number system. I noticed that on some of the work that we've done recently, there's still some confusion about how to classify numbers within the real number system. So I have here the foldable that we put together in class, and we're going to quickly review natural numbers, whole numbers, integers, rational numbers, and irrational numbers. And in addition to what we have in this foldable, which you should all have in your notes, I'm also going to offer you some advice on things that don't belong in the different sets of numbers, so that you can make sure that you're exactly clear on what does and doesn't belong in each classification of numbers. So the first classification that we have here is our natural numbers. And our definition of natural numbers is that these are our counting numbers. We start with the number 1 and we count upwards from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Very simple. Those are our natural numbers. Things that you will not see when we're talking about natural numbers: there are no fractions in natural numbers. There are no decimals in the natural number set. There are no negative numbers, and there is no number 0. So if you don't have it in your notes of what to exclude from that set, you might want to pause here or rewind it and go over it again and make sure that you have it in your notes of what is not included in the natural number set. The next set of numbers we're going to look at is our whole numbers. And our definition of whole numbers that you have in the foldable is that it's all of our natural numbers plus the number 0. So now when we count, we're going to start at 0 and count up from there. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And those are our whole numbers. So what is not included when we're talking about whole numbers? There are no fractions in the whole number set. There are no decimals in the whole number set. And there are no negative numbers in the whole number set. So once again, if you want to take note of this, write it down. You know what's included in the whole number set. Make sure that you understand what's not included. The next number set that we're going to look at is our integers. And our definition of integers says that it is all of our whole numbers plus their opposites. So now we have 0 in the center of our number line, if you will. And in one direction moving out from 0, we have all of our positive numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And moving in the other direction from 0, we have our negative numbers. -1, -2, -3, etc. Those are our integers. What's not included when we're looking at integers? There are still no fractions in our integers. And there are still no decimals. This is a very common mistake that I've been seeing, is that people think that integers include fractions, and that isn't the case. So please remember, write it down if you have to, that when you're talking about the integer set, you are not talking about fractions at all. Okay? Our next set of numbers that we have here are our rational numbers. And our definition of rational numbers is that it includes all of our integers plus those numbers that can be written as a fraction. And specifically, we're talking about a fraction where we have one integer being divided by another integer. Okay? Now, any of these fractions that can be one integer divided by another can be converted into a decimal form. And those decimal forms are going to look one of two ways. It's going to be either a terminating decimal, in other words, a decimal that has a definite end, and after that it's just zeros. For example, 3/4 or 3 divided by 4 in decimal form would be 0.75. And that's it. It doesn't go any farther than that. So that would be a terminating decimal. There are also repeating decimals. And repeating decimals are those decimals that have an infinite number of decimal places, but they repeat the same pattern of numbers over and over again. An example of that would be the number 1/3, which when you put it into decimal form, it gives you 0.33333, and it repeats indefinitely as a 3. Other repeating decimals might look like 0.757575 repeating, or 0.678678 repeating. As long as there is some sort of repeating pattern, it's a rational number, and it can be written as a decimal form. So we're not going to have exclusions right now in our rational numbers. It includes all of our fractions and many of our decimal numbers, but there are still some decimals that are not included in the rational set. And those numbers belong to the irrational set of numbers. Our definition of irrational numbers says that it is those numbers that cannot be written as a fraction. In other words, you cannot take one integer and divide it by another integer and come up with an irrational number. Irrational numbers are all non-terminating, non-repeating decimals. In other words, they have decimal values that go all the way on to an infinite number of place values, but they don't have any repeating pattern. There's no way that you can divide two numbers to come up with one of these irrational numbers. So some of the characteristics that we know for our irrational numbers is that they are non-repeating decimals and they are non-terminating decimals. We also know that any number that is the square root of a number that is not a perfect square is an irrational number. And when we practiced estimating irrational numbers, the numbers we were looking for were the square roots of numbers that are not perfect squares. So what's not included in our irrational number set? Fractions are not included in our irrational number set. If you see a number and it's written as a fraction, one integer divided by another integer, it is a rational number. That's part of the definition of rational numbers. Irrational numbers can't be written as a fraction. So I just wanted to make sure you were clear on this. Please, if there was something that I said here that you don't have in your notes, write it down. Watch the video again. Watch it a dozen times. I'm a fun person, right? So go ahead and take these notes, add this to what you have in your notes already. Make sure that you can study on not only what is included in each set, but on what's not included in each set. I'll see you next time.